Hi, and welcome to the Man Myth Podcast. We are live on Facebook for the first time, so that's a new thing. We're doing a bunch of new stuff this week. We got a new recording software, and we'll see how this works out. We took a week off. Both of us were under the weather. How you feeling, Pop?
Feeling a lot better. Had a little bronchitis going on. Couldn't stop coughing. And I also had a workshop, 3-day workshop, which didn't help my healing as much as it could have, I guess. But it did. I mean, it was good. It was really good stuff, though.
That's good. Yeah, I don't know what I had. I just all clogged up, but it was nice to feel better finally.
Yeah, I had that real deep, juicy cough that was in my lungs. I just took some colloidal silver, coughed a lot, got outside a lot, which helped.
That's good. Yeah, that always helps a lot, I think.
Nature's a good healer. Had some mullein tea, which is good for that also. Mullin's that little mullein. It's the plant, like it's on the sides of the road. It kind of grows tall with the yellow flower. It's kind of fuzzy leaf. It's a super little thing for your lungs. So
good. I'll have to remember that.
Worked out good. So
when we are back,
having a ball. Yeah, this is gonna be fun. You have to anything that we do that's uncouth or unruly, just forgive us for that because we're new to all this. But I think we talked about this. This topic coming up is going to be becoming a wide receiver, a great wide receiver, which really we're going to talk about 3 main points, and that's why we don't receive, and how we can learn to receive. And then why it's important to receive. So those are the 3 things I think we'll kind of hit those points, because it is very important to receive, especially people that are feeling anxious or depressed. A lot of times they're not receiving things that they could that enhances or increases that anxiety or that depression.
Right. Yeah, that's for sure. That's always. I feel like that's the hardest time to receive things. When you almost feel like you're getting too much negative energy, it's hard to receive the good energy.
Yeah, and I mean we've talked about this before. I think in the next 3 or 4 of these, we'll go through and just kind of review the toolbox and what tools we have in there. I think that's going to be an important to look at, and start hitting the social medias more with some information. But I thought it was it Gary V. I saw something from him today, and he said post 8 to 15 times a day, some type of content.
Yeah,
and I was like, that's not a year.
Yeah, I mean, and I've been really terrible with it, but most of the time it's just like I'll be going to bed or like falling asleep and be like, oh, I should have put that on there. I should have toasted this, and it's life gets in the way a little bit. But this is a learning curve for all of us for sure. So for you and me at least.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I want to do is I've got a new morning routine that I'm working on, and that'll be part of it. I'll get up and hit a few things, a few posts, and I guess you could even delay posts, so you could like schedule them to go out at certain times. I don't know any of this yet, so it's going to be fun and
yeah,
exciting.
You can do that on some things for yeah.
So
well, and just you getting into the social media is actually pretty cool to see it happening.
Yeah.
So
So the 3 points, and the other thing I was thinking too is we could set this up so it's like, when we do the YouTubes, we can set these up in 3 videos versus that one long one, or however you want to do it. But I want to kind of get into why we don't receive. And when I talk about that, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because we do receive, but we receive the negative much more quickly than we receive the positives. And we've talked about that a little bit, like if somebody gives you a compliment and then you say somebody else is better, or we don't take the time to actually just receive the compliment. And if that's the case, then we're not getting that. It's dopamine's a big thing right now, but you're not getting that little dopamine burst, because we're just negating it. So I think that's part of it. But if somebody says something negative, like we're a sponge, and
we really are.
A lot of times I think that's because it's that same. We've talked about this before too. Is that same thing as like, okay, let me just take all the negative stuff and then I can fix it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
we're like a chamois cloth.
Yeah, with those ShamWows. Was that those old cloths or something like that?
Yeah, ShamWow.
But yeah, I think
40 pounds of water.
Yeah, I got one of those that didn't work, but it would have been nice if that was the negative comments that were coming in though. Yeah, it didn't quite absorb it. So when you said when you're feeling depressed or anxious, you don't receive, and you thought that was kind of an overwhelm thing. What do you mean by that?
Well, so I mean, depression is it's a bitch. It is terrible, and when you're in that depressive state, I want to say it's just depression, but anytime I'm in a different mood than like a great mood, I feel like, so depression takes a lot of your energy away, which sometimes I think I don't even hear the nice things that people say while I'm depressed. It's just when you get to that breaking point, sometimes it was all I could do to just survive, that the compliments or the praises that anybody sends you, they don't matter. And you almost don't hear them because you're so just focused on surviving and getting through it, which I'm lucky that I've been doing so much with my mental health and my healing, and I have people like you and I have people like Ash. I'm one of the lucky few that gets to deal with people that actually help me instead of just people that pretend to help me. But it's almost like with your sponge. So I've let all these negative things come in. I've just absorbed and let them tear down my mood and tear down my light. I've let them just soak in. And then it's like a full sponge. You can only have so much water in a sponge, and then everything starts to roll off the top. And that's what, when you're in that depressive state, that's what it's like with the positive comments. But the problem is, if you hear negative comments when you're depressed, even though that you'd think that because that sponge is full, those will roll off. No, but those get embedded too. It's almost like it knows to replace, oh, here's something even worse than what you were holding on to. I'm going to suck this up. It's exhausting going through depression, especially how I was how I misunderstood that as a man I had to deal with it, because I thought that because I'm a man I just had to deal with it. Nobody cared. Nobody was going to even believe that I was depressed. So it was one of those things that it took me a long time, and I talk about this all the time, but it took me a long, long time to get to where I am and get to be able to actually not only express and talk about my depression, but accept my depression and use it as like a sounding board. I'm just sharing my story, hoping that it resonates with someone, hoping that I can help anybody. So I've noticed that it is a bad thing, but it's not always a bad thing. And that's why we do this, because if I have one gift, it's the gift of gab. I can talk about and to anyone. So it's just, it's been a long journey, but it's so nice to be able to have where I'm able to absorb more of the positive instead of all the negative.
So it's squeezing the sponge out and getting the negatives. But I think, again, asking for help is a huge factor. It isn't like,
right,
here, I'm broken. It's more like, hey, I really need to get this off my chest, or I need to know somebody's on my side, or can support me, or can just hold space for me while I walk through this. Right, because and I think one of the things in our communications of things, and again, when we get to the third part of this, it'll kind of tie a lot of this together. But sometimes and I've had this where I'm doing a session with somebody, they don't want answers. They just want to be heard.
Right.
And them actually saying the words is part of their receiving. Right. So
yeah, exactly.
If I told you were depressed, and right away there would be that, not now, but in the midst of the main part of the depression, there would be that pushback, I would think. Like, no, I'm not. Right. Because you are in denial. So if you're that way, you're not going to receive even the compliments or the help. So, and each person's different. And, I'll be working with some people and they'll just go through the process and they'll stop and say, what do you think about that? That's my key, right? Is to say,
that's when you talk.
This is what but I go into, this is what I hear you saying. Is that right? And they're like, either like, man, I'd never thought of it that way. Or they're like, no, I didn't mean it that way, or that's not what I was trying to say. Then we work through it again. And not saying that either of us is wrong. It's just where each person is in the conversation, where they are in their mindset. But we actually become experts in holding on to negativity.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's just what we're surrounded by, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, if somebody gives suggestions without being asked to, then again, it turns it from just being depressed to being depressed and broken, or depressed and wrong.
Exactly.
So, in the way I like to work with that is just let the person hear themselves say what they're thinking or feeling.
Exactly.
because it seems like
Yeah,
to
but
me,
I feel like
If you could see you